my computer, and we are on. All right, so now, once again, I'm going to attempt to use my rabbinic powers to share a wonderful Haggadah. And away we go. And I'm going to open up with some music from Psalm 96. Let the field exult and all that is therein. Shall all the trees of the woods sing for joy as we do now. Ya'alo Sadai, Vecho Asherbo, Ya'alo Sadai. Ay, 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 Ya'alo Sadai, Vecho Asherbo, Ya'alo Sadai. Ay, 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 Az Yiranenu, Kolatseya, Gaz Yiranenu, Kolatseya, Az Yiranenu, Kolatseya, Az Yiranenu, Kolatseya, Alo Sadai, Vechol Asher Bo, Alo Sadai. Ay, 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 Alo Sadai. V'chol asher bo ya'alo sadai. Ay, 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 ay. Woo, what an opening. Okay, as we move ahead.
Thank you.
In Leviticus, in the book of Leviticus, we read that new trees should not be harvested for 3 years. The fruit of a 4-year-old tree should be set aside as a gift to God, and the fruit of a 5-year-old tree may be eaten. The Talmud established this day, the 15th day of the month of Shevat, known as Tu B'Shevat, as the birthday and new year of all trees to help us fulfill that mitzvah, that commandment. Book of Deuteronomy, we read, a human being is a tree of the field. Proverbs depicts the Torah as Eitz Chaim, a tree of life, to them that hold it fast. And the Jewish mystic, the Kabbalists, visualize even God as a tree, with roots in creation, branches spreading far and wide. Or perhaps God is the root from whom all blessings flow into the varied branches of creation. The Kabbalists created this Tu B'Shevat Seder as a tikkun, as a ritual of repair. By eating fruits and nuts, which we'll do in a second, if you have, please get them ready. With special mindfulness, we strive to repair our own spiritual brokenness and the brokenness in the world, which is not yet as we and God most wish it to be. This is a day for relating to God in and through the natural world. Amid the cold of winter, and it was a very fitting day. It was kind of cool, and a cool breeze in the air. Let us reconnect with the world of root and leaf, affirming our faith that spring will indeed come. And so we come to the 4 worlds, the 4 levels of existence, which we kind of go back and forth in to a degree. And the first one is the world Olam Ha'asiyah, the world of action. It's the world in which we live actively and physically. It's tangible stuff we can touch, flesh, stone, wood. Here, the spark of the divine presence is hidden by the shell of appearance. And so this world, again, is one of physicality. Each world is associated with a season of the year and an element. This world of Asiyah is associated with wintertime and with the earth. In winter, the ground is frozen on the mainland and other places. It's cooler even in Hawaii a bit. But we know it contains the life of spirit below. And so if you have white wine or juice to pour, this is the time to do it. I'm going to ask Hinda to pour us some white juice.
For yourself?
And that symbolizes winter's paler light. And for those folks who know snow, snow. And so as you pour your white juice or wine, I invite you to join me in offering praise to the creator of the fruit of the vine. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. L'chaim. Okay. In winter, we lay ourselves in clothing, blanketing ourselves from the cold or cooler weather. Just as the earth is insulated by snow, the fruit we eat for this world of Asiyah has protective outside and a soft interior. Removing the hard shells of things like pomegranates, walnuts, and almonds, coconuts, or pecans exposes a vulnerable side. Some of these fruits have special significance in Jewish tradition. The almond, the first tree that blossoms every year in Israel. I'm hoping my son Kelvin will see that soon if he gets there. Or the walnut, which Rabbi Tarfon likened to the people of Israel. Yes, he related us like a pile of walnuts. That if you take one walnut out of the pile, every other walnut in the pile will be shaken. And when a single Jew is shaken, every other one of us is also affected the same way. Thank you. We're all nuts in a sense. So with that, I invite you to get ready to see the shell, or think of the shell which conceals these fruits, it also protects, and know that what that feels like. In the world of school or work or just everyday living activities, our spiritual selves require protection and nurturing. Sometimes we wrap ourselves in a tough outer shell to protect our feelings and our hearts inside. As we eat these fruits representing Asiyah, the world of the physical, may we find healing in our physical lives, in our relationships with our bodies, in our strength, in all matters, physical and practical, in our environment. So we're gonna feast on walnuts and almonds. And yes, we have a banana, not no bananas, we have a banana. So,
They
and
don't grow on trees like banana plant.
it doesn't matter, but it's covered. So, no, that's later.
Oh.
So, yeah, we're going to just see
Sorry.
this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'etz. So what fruits or nuts with a hard outer shell and soft inside are you eating? Anybody? Or you can put it in the chat box if you want as well.
I have walnut.
Walnuts. Okay, good choice.
We have pistachios.
Ooh, lucky you. You're the one. Okay. Great.
And I think I'm about to eat this banana.
Oh, okay. Potassium. Good choice there. Wow. It's hard to do a Seder when your mouth is full, but I'm going to keep going. We move on to the second of the worlds. Olam HaYetzirah, the world of Yetzirah, the world of change, emotion, transformation, the world in which we turn clay into brick, iron into plows, words into poetry, revealing and celebrating our creative power, both ours and God's. The world is full of emotions and heart, and we celebrate change and creativity. The world is associated with springtime, the element of water. And so to symbolize this, we drink white wine or juice with a dash of red. So can you dash some red into our cups? If you guys have wine or juice with you and you have white, you want to put a dash of red in there to make it sort of a pale kind of color. This gradual deepening parallels the reawakening of colors in nature as the sun brings the earth back to life. In spring, the sun's rays begin to warm and in some cases thaw out frozen earth, and flowers appear on the hillsides. We drink the second cup and we say, hoping to blossom into our full potential. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen l'chaim. We eat fruits without protective shells, things like olives or dates or apricots, peaches or plums, to symbolize how in springtime we forget about our protective attire and can expose our softer inner bodies to the sun. Still, these fruits contain pits, reminding us that we may still have some hardness around our hearts, in a manner of speaking. Despite the wondrous expressions of our spirit, each of us still tied somewhat, in some ways, often to the stone of ego. We still need to feel protected from that which makes us vulnerable. Like the nuts we ate in the world of Asiyah, some of these have special significance. The olive, of course, harkens back to the flood, time of Noah, who sends out a dove who comes back in its bill with a leaf that it had picked from an olive tree. And so as we take up a fruit or nut of Yetzirah, may our hearts be open to the feelings and needs of ourselves and others, allowing the warmth of our care to extend to the whole world. May we find healing in the realm of emotion, and may we find healing in our hearts as we say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'etz. So what are you giving me? What are you giving me here? What do you got? Dates. Right. I didn't have a lot of dates when I was younger, but that's another story for another time. So anyway, I will have one now. These are dates. Where are my dates? Where are my dates? Where's my dates? Oh, I want the dates. I know. See, I have fun. Very nice. Anybody eating anything unusual or even not unusual in this category? All right. Thank you, David. Yeah, beautiful.
What?
What was it?
Nice.
Grabbing apricots.
Apricots. Oh, beautiful.
Oh, apricots. I love it.
I know. Gosh, I didn't find them. Thank you. Delicious. All right. Well, we're up to world number 3, the world of Bria, the world of creation. of air, thought, contemplation, and recall the words of Genesis that God formed humans from the dust of the earth and blew into the nostrils of humans the breath of life. And the human being became a living being placed in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and protect it. Bria is the world of ethereal realm of thought. It's associated with summertime and the element of air. One name for God is the breath of life. We breathe out what the trees breathe in. God breathes in us and through us. And Bria is the world of the holy breath of creation. We drink red wine or juice with a dash of white, reminding us that as the land becomes warmer and the colors of the fruits deepen as they ripen, we too become warmer and more open. So add a bit of white juice or wine to your red juice or wine. All right, here we go. Wow. Okay, whoa, cool. All right. What's that? We got more? Okay. Doing it right. So we add that color combination together as we say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen, amen l'chaim. Okay. For this world of Bria, we eat fruits, soft fruits, to remind ourselves to relinquish both our shells and the stones we carry inside. In our deepest relationships, may we be like the fruit of this world of Bria, with no inner shell and no outer facade. Some of the fruits we eat now, again, have special significance in Jewish tradition. The fig is mentioned in the Torah 16 times, together with the vine, as the most important fruit of the land of Israel. In Torah, the fig symbolizes an era of peace and security. And the rabbis asked, why were the words of Torah compared to the fig tree? Since all the figs do not ripen at the same time, the more one searches the tree, the more figs one finds in it. So it is with words of Torah. The more we study them, the more sweet morsels that we find. There's also a Talmudic story told about a man named Honi, who encounters an old man planting a tiny sapling, and Honi laughs, "Foolish man, do you think you'll still be alive to eat the fruit of this tree?" And the old man replied, "I found trees in this world when I was born. My grandparents planted them for me. So too, I am planting for my grandchildren." And what was the tree in question? We're told it's the carob tree. So some carob here for you to see. And we're eating our carob tree right now. So as we eat the fruits of Bria, may we find healing in our intellectual lives and our minds, our thoughts, in the light of brilliant insight. And we say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'etz. So this is your time to eat your completely edible. So we have more carob. Okay, we got a lot of carob here going. And actually, clear the figs. Oh, sorry, the figs.
Hello.
Oh, figs right here. Figs. If anybody finds fig Newtons, let me know. All right. One last world to talk about. Oh, what do you guys got? Yeah, what are you guys eating?
Raspberries.
Oh, okay. I'll raise you a strawberry. Good. And also, I think we have grapes here too. So we gotta go on.
Wine on them.
Okay. I make wine, exactly. The last of the worlds. Atzilut, the world of essence. We live in the world of Atzilut, essence or divine emanation, the divine appearance of God. Physics tells us that what seems solid is actually filled with impossibly small spaces. And Atzilut affirms that this knowing what seems like creation is actually just God. The world of Atzilut is the world of essence and spirit. The world is associated with the season of fall and the element of fire. So this is the world of that which is untouchable, intangible. And to represent it, we drink deep red wine or juice. So I'm going to deepen my juice here. The pure red liquid represents the full bloom of nature before the cold of winter. As nature expends its last bit of energy, an explosion of colorful leaves, a full cycle is completed. And as we drink this last cup of pure red wine or juice, may we become strong like healthy trees with solid roots in the ground and with our arms open to the love that surrounds us. We take up our last cup. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. In this world, we eat no fruit or nuts, for this world cannot be represented by any such thing. In the spiritual world, we become aware of God's love, mercy, wisdom, perceived with our hearts and not our senses. Our hearts are full. We praise the source that renews all creation. The four worlds, action, emotion, thought, and spirit, are each nested inside each of the others. We live in all four realms at once, in a sense. Sometimes we have hard shells like the nuts of Asiyah. Sometimes we have a rock inside us like the fruits of Yetzirah. Sometimes we are soft all the way through like the fruits of Bria. And sometimes we're so connected with the divine presence that we melt beyond our bodies altogether, living in Atzilut. May we find blessing in each of these four ways of being, each of these four seasons, and each of these four worlds. And before we come to our guest tonight, I wanted to share both the words of Reb Nachman of Braslav, who was very much a proponent of living one's Judaism by getting in the great outdoors. And we have that opportunity, thankfully, here in Hawaii. So while you're reading these words of Reb Nachman, since it is the, I want to say 10th yahrzeit anniversary of the death of Debbie Friedman of blessed memory, I wanted to offer her interpretation of these words and her melody. So I'll invite you to read this while I sing this. You are the one, for this I pray, that I may have the strength to be alone, see the world, to stand among the trees and all the living things, that I may stand alone and offer prayers and talk to you. You are the one to whom I do belong, and I'll sing my soul to you, and give you all that's in my heart. May all the foliage of the fields, all grasses, trees, and plants awaken at my coming, this I pray, and send my life into my words of prayer, so that my speech, my thoughts, and my prayers will be made whole, and through the spirit of all growing things. And we know that everything is one, because we know that everything is you. You are the one, for this I pray. I ask you, God, to hear my words that pour out from my heart. I stand before you. I, like water, lift my hands to you in prayer, and grant me strength to be alone. You are the one to whom I do belong. And I'll sing my soul to you, and give you all that's in my heart. You are the one, for this I pray, and I'll sing my soul to you. And that is our Tu B'Shevat Seder, friends. So we're going to move to the second part of our gathering tonight, and I want to introduce our wonderful guests for this evening. David Henkin came to Hawaii, thankfully, in 1995, originally just for an 8-month period of work with the Honolulu office of Earthjustice, but thankfully for all of us, he never left. Some 25 years at Earthjustice, David has advocated on behalf of communities around the state of Hawaii, across the Pacific, seeking to preserve and protect the natural and cultural resources on which our well-being of our communities are dependent. Highlights of his work include protecting Native Hawaiian sacred sites and endangered species from destructive live fire training at Makua Valley here on Oahu, convincing the Navy to modify its training with sonar and explosives to avoid harm to whales, dolphins, other marine mammals around the Hawaiian Islands, securing protection for essential recovery habitat for hundreds of endangered and threatened species in Hawaii and the Mariana Islands, and compelling the longline fishing industry to alter its fishing techniques to avoid doing harm to false killer whales and sea turtles. I also like to think that David's work also led recently to the shift in the certain sunblocks that are now used as opposed to others to protect our beautiful natural resources. David won a landmark case, Clean Water Act case, before the United States Supreme Court recently. Both of David's children attended our Gan Yerushalayim preschool back in the day, and David's youngest, who we saw just a minute ago, celebrated becoming a bar mitzvah at Temple Emmanuel. David and his wife, Aisha Nibby, are enthusiastic participants indeed in our Shabbat services, and I'm glad to know that the services and our gatherings have lifted their spirits during this time of pandemic. And so let me first get rid of this screen so I can see David clearly. There we go. And David, this is a virtual lay coming your way, my friend. So this is for you. Thank you. And without further ado, I'm very grateful to you tonight to share with us about how you came to make Earthjustice, the latest in your chapter of your life's work, and how your passion and spark developed for taking care of the Aina of God's beautiful work of creation. So David, please go right ahead.
Okay, well, thank you, Rabbi, and thanks everyone. It's great to see you all. I wish that we could see each other in person, but like Rabbi mentioned, Aisha and I regularly are there with you on Shabbat and enjoying that with you, and it's really helped us get through this period. So, Rabbi asked me to talk just a little bit about how I got to do what I'm doing, and I'd like to also invite, after some introductory remarks, to a little conversation. So if there's issues going on that you want to talk about, or things that I mentioned that you'd like to know more about, then this is a great opportunity to do that. I think, like a lot of young people, I grew up really just enchanted by nature. I loved animals. I loved seeing the world around me. And it always just bothered me that, like there'd be garbage. So I'd go out walking with my mom, and I'd constantly be handing her pieces of garbage. And, that was kind of my introduction to environmental protection. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. Specifically, when I was in high school, I did a lot of high school speech and debate. I enjoyed arguing, and felt like I should become a lawyer. And so off I went to law school. And before going there, I had a really important formative experience. I took a year off between college and law school, and I worked at a Wall Street commercial law firm. And this is no disrespect to people who do commercial law, but for me, when I went to that law firm, the people were super nice. Everything was wonderful about it. It was, New York City in the late 80s. There was a lot of money around, and they treated us very well. But I didn't find any emotional connection to the work that I was doing there. And so when I went to law school, I was like, I wanted to find my home. I wanted to find something that I could be passionate about. And so I was really lucky that my second summer of law school, I was a law clerk, finding a summer job at the San Francisco office of what's now Earthjustice. It used to be called Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund. And when I went there, I was just immediately taken with the work that the lawyers were doing, the other people in the office, just the passion they felt for protecting the earth, God's creation. And the clients we were working with, who weren't in it to make any money, they just really wanted to protect the places that were important to them in their community. And I said, this is something that I can do with my life, where I'll feel like I'm making a difference and making a positive contribution. This is something that I can passionately, get up and do every day. And so when I finished law school, I was looking for a paying gig as a public interest environmental attorney, which, it's kind of few and far between. I was living in the Bay Area, and I learned about an opportunity to come to the Honolulu office of what was still then Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund, again now Earthjustice. And just as a little background, Earthjustice is a national organization. We're based in San Francisco, and then we've got regional offices around the country. So everywhere from Honolulu to New York City, everywhere from Miami to Anchorage, Alaska. And And this year actually is going to be our 50th anniversary. So we were founded in the early 1970s, 1971, by a bunch of attorneys who felt like they were kind of coming out of the civil rights movement, and all the lawyers who were for being the advocates for civil rights. And they said, there should be a law firm, a legal defense fund for the earth. And so they founded the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund. They borrowed the name from the Sierra Club with the Sierra Club's permission, but they were a separate organization, and they've grown ever since. And so we've had an office here in Hawaii since 1988, so a little over 30 years. And I came, as Rabbi mentioned, in 1995. One of the attorneys in the office was going on maternity leave, and they needed someone just to fill in for 8 months, to kind of keep the ball rolling. And, I was very happy in the Bay Area, but it's like, it's a paying job. And so I really didn't know anything about Hawaii. I literally was pretty uninformed. Well, as soon as I got off the plane, and as soon as I started getting involved in the issues here, the passion that I felt working as a summer law clerk in San Francisco went from this level to this level, because the work of the office in Hawaii was really at that time cutting edge for the environmental movement. It's becoming a little bit more common, thank goodness. But on the mainland, the focus was on nature. That's fair enough. Fish, trees, water, animals, that type of thing. And what was going on in the Hawaii office was the relationship between people and the land. So it wasn't just about nature, us over here and nature over there. It was how we come together, and infused by the host culture, by the native Hawaiian culture. So one of my first cases, fresh off the plane, I went out to Waianae, and I met with a number of community members who were concerned about live fire training at Makua Valley on the west side. And that live fire training was causing fires that were burning up the valley and going up into the ridgelines around the valley, where there are over 40 federally listed endangered and threatened species, some found at Makua and nowhere else in the world, and all of them native only to Hawaii. And so, that kind of brought in the traditional tree hugging kind of environmental thing. But these folks were also really concerned about the native Hawaiian cultural sites. Makua means parents, and some of the native Hawaiian chants talk about Makua being the place where Papa Hanau Mokuakea and Wakea all got together, and so Sky Father and Earth Mother and human beings came from that. And so I immediately got involved in this thing. It was so much grander than what I had been doing before, where it's like, oh, let's help the species over there. No, let's help each other as a family, as a community, heal the earth, which really, and Rabbi asked me to touch a little bit on how this relates to my Judaism. I have to admit, I was not raised a practicing Jew. I was culturally Jewish. We did the main holidays and such, but really it's since I've come to Hawaii, and frankly, through my children, and in particularly Alex getting involved in the temple, that I've deepened my understanding of Judaism and that obligation to take care of God's creation. And it's really, been yet another thing, a little bit more fuel for my emotional fire to be excited about what I'm doing. And so, the work that I've been doing now for 25 years, and it really goes fast. But Aisha can't believe that I've had the same job for 25 years. But I wake up every morning and am excited about, what I'm doing because of the communities that I'm serving, and the values that they're trying to promote, and how they're trying to just make the world a better place. And so I'm what kind of motivates me is sort of two things: an idealism, a desire for the world that I'd like to see it to be, and also some realism about what I, as one person, can really do, to kind of bend things in that direction. And so, I think I would have gotten discouraged over the last 25 years if I thought I could wave a magic wand and heal the world. But I don't have that level of hubris. My hope, my goal, and kind of what's motivated me since I first went to law school is just to find a cause that I could devote myself to try and, if I'm, if at the end of the day, when I'm all done and I hang up my lawyer hat, just to feel like I've pushed in the right direction a bit. And I feel really blessed that I've had some successes, and I think they have to do not with me personally, but just sort of the power that flows with you when you're moving in the direction that, the world, the God, depends on how you think of it, the way things should be. And so this last year, I had the biggest challenge of my legal career, a case that I had won. Rabbi mentioned Clean Water Act case involving, the subject matter is there's a wastewater treatment plant in West Maui that disposes of millions of gallons of treated sewage every day. But instead of a pipe going into the ocean, which everyone knows would require control under the Clean Water Act to protect the ocean resources, they use injection wells. It goes down into the groundwater and then it goes out into the ocean. And for years, for decades, actually, they've claimed that they don't need to comply with the Clean Water Act because they're not discharging into the ocean. They're discharging into the groundwater that goes into the ocean, which kind of defied common sense. And so in 2012, I brought the lawsuit here locally in Hawaii. I was fortunate to win in the local court here in Honolulu. The county then appealed it to the Court of Appeals, where I argued in 2018 and won that case. But then they appealed it to the United States Supreme Court. And for those who don't know, the Supreme Court picks and chooses the cases that it wants to take. You don't have a right to go to the Supreme Court. And so at first I thought, hey, there's no way we're going to go to the Supreme Court. But then a few things happened with another Court of Appeals going the other way. And when there's a split between the courts, that's when the Supreme Court often gets involved if it's a matter of national importance. And there were a lot of industries that wanted to be able to pollute our surface waters, our oceans, our lakes, our rivers through groundwater without having to get a permit. So it was actually a big political issue. The Trump administration got involved. They flipped the position that the Environmental Protection Agency had taken for the previous 40 years under every administration, Republican and Democrat, that these types of, you can't get around the Clean Water Act by using the groundwater as a sewer. Trump administration said, no, it's okay. Blank check, do what you want. And they advocated for the Supreme Court to take the case, and they did. And when that happened, because of the perceived conservative bent of the Supreme Court, everyone thought we were going to lose. Didn't matter that it didn't make any sense that one could do this. Didn't matter, just sort of what made common sense, but just everyone's like the politics of it. It's not a chance. And this was, again, the challenge of my career to just not to put those negative thoughts behind me and really focus on, what I thought was the right thing to advocate for, and try and put it so strongly, so forcefully that even a conservative leaning court would have to see it our way. And then thankfully in April of last year, we got the ruling that 6 of the 9 justices went our way. And so very happy, not only for the clients that I'm serving, thank you, Hinda, not only for the clients, serving on Maui, although I must admit the court then announced a rule saying, yes, discharges via groundwater need to comply with the Clean Water Act under a certain set of factors. And everyone said, okay, well, obviously Maui's got to see the writing on the wall, but we're still fighting back in the local court. Actually, that's what I've been doing all week this week, is gearing up for yet another argument in the court. So the wheels of justice turn slowly, but I'm hopeful and confident that we're going to finally see justice for Maui. And in the meantime, all around the country, communities facing similar situations, not everyone's fighting as hard as Maui County. So other polluters have seen the writing on the wall and have been cleaning up their act as a result of this decision. And so I'm just, really happy and honored to have had the opportunity to do that. So anyhow, so I would really welcome if there are any issues that people want to talk about.
I want to say before you take questions, David and Yashikov, thank you so much. You've given my wife and me hope, because you talked about your passion for arguing and how that led to your wonderful work. And our teenagers have a passion for arguing at each of their own. So I can only hope that they turn out to do work similar to what you've been doing. But my better half has a question, so go ahead, better half.
Well, actually, Hinda, before you ask that question, I have to say I've learned over time, and it's come only with gray hairs, to try and channel that energy towards my day job and try and keep it out of the home as much as possible. Now, Aisha's giving me the thumbs up. She's been helping me understand that better. So it's a question of really kind of focusing the energy.
Thanks.
Got
And
that.
go for it.
So, David, what do you think, in your opinion, is the worst thing that Hawaii's has? Okay, rewind. What is the worst thing that's going on in Hawaii right now?
Currently, beside the case you're still fighting on Maui.
Oh, the worst thing that's happening. Gosh, unfortunately there are a number of competitors for that title. I'm going to start with a very general umbrella term of one of the worst things. I have to say that generally I find that in Hawaii, people are very open to environmental protection in their hearts, I think. You know, there are other parts of the country where people are more hostile to the notion of environmental protection. And I think that guided by the Hawaiian host culture, which really has just infuses so much of our life here, that people really get the importance of our relationship to the land and to the earth in general. I would say, as an umbrella thing, one of the problems is not taking the time to do things right. So one of the biggest problems is that we make very short-sighted decisions because we rush them through. I'll give you a few examples, and that just to kind of illustrate what I'm saying, where, you know, it wouldn't have taken much more to do it the right way, but, you know, without really thinking it through. First, I'm going to go with a real historic example. So the, 100 some odd years ago, the plantation owners wanted to deal with the problem of rats that were eating their crops. And someone got the brilliant idea of, let's bring in mongoose, because mongoose can kill anything, right? And back then, they didn't have an environmental review process. There was no environmental impact statement you needed to do. So there was no opportunity for public input, including expert input. And I'd like to think that if way back then they had gone through some of the processes and complied with some of the rules we have right now, someone would have said, you know, mongoose are active during the day and rats are active at night. And so if you introduce mongoose, they're going to eat up all of our native birds that nest on the ground, which is why our native seabirds primarily nest on little offshore islands like the Mokes, and they're no longer barely found on land. The Nene goose has been extirpated from most of the islands, still does okay at higher elevations on the Big Island and over on Kauai, where as far as I know, although there have been reports, there's no established mongoose. Anyhow, so that's an illustration from the history book, so we don't take it too personally. Well, let's fast forward. I've got a case going on right now against my friends at Maui County again. They recently made a decision to change out all of the streetlights on the island to save energy. Great idea. So they wanted to get rid of these old sort of you've seen these yellowish, they're called high pressure sodium. They're the old style street lights, and replace them with LEDs. Great, okay, LEDs are more efficient. Well, they didn't do any environmental review for it, even though they were required to do that. And as a result, they chose an LED that is bright white. Problem with bright white LEDs is that they're horrible in terms of attracting endangered and threatened seabirds that have been evolved over the eons. They fledge at night and they look for the light of the stars and the moon on the ocean. So if they see a bright street light, they're just hardwired, particularly the first year fledging birds. So they just spin around those lights until they whack into a building or they get exhausted or they fall to the ground, at which point they're run over by a car, they're eaten by a cat or dog, or they're just exhausted and die. Same thing with sea turtles. When sea turtles hatch, they go towards the ocean and they're attracted to bright white light. So if Maui County had actually done the required environmental review, and we ultimately sued and won on this issue, but unfortunately after they started the project, because they didn't announce it to anyone, because they didn't follow the process. If they just looked over to the neighboring island, if they'd gone out to East Maui and looked across to the big island, they would have seen the big island has amber colored LEDs, same color as the old energy inefficient lights.
Yeah.
So just as good at illuminating streets and all that, but not attracting the birds and the turtles. So I think some of this short-sightedness is a huge problem in the state. Of course, one of our biggest threats is unfortunately a little bit beyond us in terms of the local things we can do, and that's global climate change, which affects us both in terms of our weather and in terms of sea level rise, which erodes our beaches and really threatens all of our infrastructure. Hawaii does contribute to global greenhouse gases, but we're a relatively small population. So, as a result of that challenge, we're going to have to be really smart about how we address some of these forces beyond our control. So when it comes to protecting our infrastructure, protecting Kalanianola Highway, protecting Kamehameha Highway from high tides and such, we're going to have to be really thoughtful and mindful to make sure that we don't make some of these same inadvertent errors like we did with the mongoose a long time ago and with streetlights on Maui just a few years ago. One last example of this, not thinking it through. On the island of Kauai, so no mongoose, because I don't know, maybe it's apocryphal, but apparently when they were going to bring the box of mongoose to Kauai and they were offloading it, some sailor's hand got bitten and they dropped it into the ocean. That may be completely fictional, but that's what that's the one island where they didn't intentionally introduce them, and that's what I've heard. But anyway, so we have a lot of these endangered and threatened seabirds on the island of Kauai that can actually nest in the mountains on the mainland of Kauai. Well, after Iniki hit in the early 90s, all of the power lines got knocked down. And so to get the power up quickly and cheaply, they put the power lines back up, layered one on top of the other on top of the other, instead of the T thing that you mainly see. Well, the problem there is, so these same seabirds, and here I'm mainly talking about Newell shearwaters, which are a threatened seabird whose population has declined by about 93% in the last 25 years since Iniki. And 90% of their world population is on Kauai, and they're not found outside of the state of Hawaii. Anyhow, the problem with putting the lines vertically up like this is these night flying seabirds can't see the lines. So it's like having a drift net in the sky. So they hit the lines. And that's why we've had, so if they just put the wires on fewer layers, and if they'd put them lower down so they were shielded by trees, or instead of putting them over a bridge, so the bird can see the bridge. It's like evolved to be able to see large things. Mm-hmm. So it flies above the bridge and it hits the wires. If we just attach the wires to the underside of the bridge, like you can do, you would have killed a lot less birds. So anyhow, so I would say one of the biggest challenges we face is doing dumb things because we don't think about the consequences.
Thank you, David. Anyone else? Any other questions for our wonderful guests? Either chat box or just unmute yourself to ask away. This is your opportunity. And see if anybody, while we're waiting, how best can we support you and other people who are doing similar work that you're doing in having us be less short-sighted? How can we best support you and Earthjustice?
Well, I'm not sure if that was an invitation, but Earthjustice is a nonprofit. It's January, so it's a little late to make the end of tax year pitch. But we are a nonprofit. We do depend on contributions to do our work, and so that is appreciated. One of the things I am a little bit concerned about is that with the end of the Trump administration, well, first of all, politics aside, just strictly in terms of environmental protection, the new administration has been a real godsend in terms of
Politics aside.
well, there's all other reasons why one might have a different political view, but on this particular, on the issue of environmental protection, the Trump administration had a very anti-regulatory agenda, which was very good for the stock market, reducing the so-called regulatory burden. But there's a lot of, to use econ speak, externalities, which are what happens in the world when you no longer regulate corporations and let them maximize their profit regardless of the consequences. So it's really good for the stock market, but not so good for environmental protection. And so a lot of the work that I and other lawyers at Earthjustice have been doing over the last 4 years has been just trying to hold the line. I literally filed 2 lawsuits the week before the inauguration against some, because the timing I had to, because of some new regulations under the Endangered Species Act that the Trump Fish and Wildlife Service and National Marine Fisheries Service passed, that are going to eliminate protection for vital habitat to help these species survive. The incoming administration, one of their first acts was to publish a list of regulations that they're going to review and maybe reverse without having to litigate it, for the next 10 years. And both of the regulations that I challenged 2 weeks ago are on that list. So that's good. I would say generally in terms of what folks can do to support environmental protection, I think it's really important. I think letters to the editor are great. I think any way to publicly express support for doing the right thing. I think writing to your state legislator, writing to your congressperson, writing to your senator. It's unfortunate we're not meeting in person because otherwise we get to see Senator Schatz occasionally in person at Shul. But letting them know that their constituents are behind doing these things is critical, because we can win in the court of law and we have a really good win record, but if we don't win in the court of public opinion, those laws were not carved by God on 2 tablets. They can, by and large, be changed with a stroke of the pen, either by a government agency that changes a regulation, or by Congress that doesn't think that the people are behind doing these types of environmental protection. So I think that's critical. And then I think in our own lives, just being mindful about what we're doing and why we're doing it, trying to be more judicious in how much electricity we use and all that. And then I think for Hawaii as a whole, one of the things that we've discovered, and the COVID pandemic has of course been horrendous in so many ways. It's also, with every crisis, there is opportunity. And I think that one of the things it showed us is that Hawaii's economic model, which is based on ever-growing tourism, is completely unsustainable. Both in terms of the natural resources and the infrastructure and the quality of life and all that. Now, obviously, we need to think of an economic model that is going to allow all the people who've been put out of work or been disadvantaged because of the lack of tourists. But trying to think of, I've heard promising things from the legislature and from some of the city council people and others that we need to do tourism smarter, because just, a growth path of more isn't gonna work. And I think that, some of this reset gives us an opportunity to hopefully have some good public discussion about how we can do it smarter, bring in the money that we need, take care of our people, and all that, but also do it in a way that is more sustainable. Because
I couldn't agree more. Unless there's anyone else out there with a burning question they need to give voice to, or either unmuting or chat box, I want to again thank you, David, for taking the time to talk with us tonight. I'm a proponent of capitalism, but capitalism with a conscience, and I think that's the conscience is what you bring to the table. Thank you, thanks, Larry. And also, just one more thing I thought of while you were speaking, sharing with us is, we talk about Medinat Yisrael, the state of Israel in modern terms, but in biblical terms, it's Eretz Yisrael, It's the land, it's the earth, Israel. And I think we need to remember that wherever we live, that it's the earth. You're very welcome. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, it's-
Um, I really, huh? Oh, Larry, go ahead, Larry, please. You have a question or comment for David? If you can unmute.
Yes, David.
Yes.
I assume you're making yourself annoying enough to get some people that want to settle with you.
I'm a big fan of settlement. I've settled some really excellent cases. Actually, the Makua case, one of the early rounds in 2001, we were able to reach agreement with the Army, and one of the things that we were able to work through that settlement that we actually could not have gotten if we had just gone to the court, because it would have been beyond what the court could order. We got a restoration of cultural access to the sacred sites of Makua. We got a commitment from the Army, enforceable commitment to start cleaning up the bombs, to remove unexploded ordnance, both for public safety and for cultural access, lots of things. So settlement is wonderful. And I can assure you that in this now 8-year-old case against the County of Maui over the wastewater treatment plant, I represent Maui residents. They're not in this just to sue their county and make their lives difficult. They just want them to fix the problem by investing in the infrastructure. And so we've offered repeatedly to, like, let's stop spending money on experts and lawyers, and instead invest that in fixing the problem. Unfortunately, so far the county has spent over $5 million fighting the lawsuit. And that's money that really should have been, that's my client's money because they're taxpayers on Maui, and they really would have liked it to be invested in fixing.
Are you planting seeds, however? If you
Yes.
had a settlement policy that would generate money into environmental education within the school system, you have a very fertile group of children in these islands. And if you can teach them their place in and on the soil while they're young enough, that will generate a wave well beyond our lifetime.
Sure.
So unfortunately, we may put some lawyers out of work, but that's
I'm happy to sleep in on the weekends. That's fine.
Well, I invite you all, and thank you, David, thank you, everybody, to take the rest of Tu B'Shevat, because it ends tomorrow, sundown, to really consider and be mindful of the delicious bounty that the earth affords us, and how we can do a better job of being, as David, as you said, more thoughtful in the way we go about it. So to everybody, Chag Sameach, happy Tu B'Shevat, and on to Purim. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your evening, and shaloha, and keep the nuts and fruits going, everybody. Thank you so much, David. Again, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Aloha.
Stay well, everyone. Have a good night.